Title: Whispers in the Walls. Maggie had always been intrigued by old houses, so when she saw the abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town, she knew she had to explore it. She had heard rumors that the mansion was haunted, but she didn't believe in ghosts. So one day, she gathered her courage and made her way to the mansion. The mansion was old and decrepit, with vines crawling up the walls and broken windows. Maggie pushed open the front door and stepped inside. The air was musty, and there was a thick layer of dust covering everything. As she explored the mansion, Maggie heard whispers coming from the walls. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but the whispers grew louder and more distinct. Maggie followed the whispers to a small room at the back of the mansion. Inside, she found an old diary lying on a dusty table. As she read the diary, Maggie learned about the tragic history of the mansion. The previous owners had been a wealthy family who had fallen on hard times. They had been forced to sell the mansion to a new owner, who had turned it into a boarding house. The boarders had been a strange and secretive group, and the family had suspected that something was not right. They had tried to investigate but had never found any evidence of wrongdoing. As Maggie read the diary, she felt a sense of sadness for the family who had lost their home and their sense of security. She also felt a sense of unease, as if the whispers in the walls were trying to tell her something. As night fell, Maggie decided to spend the night in the mansion. She set up her sleeping bag in the room with the diary and tried to get some rest. But the whispers in the walls continued, and Maggie found it hard to sleep. Suddenly, she heard footsteps coming from the hallway. Maggie sat up, heart pounding, and listened as the footsteps grew closer. She could hear the sound of someone breathing, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. The door to the room creaked open, and Maggie could see a faint figure standing in the doorway. It was a woman, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, with long, curly hair. Maggie was terrified, but she tried to remain calm. "Who are you?" she asked. The woman didn't answer, but she beckoned to Maggie to follow her. Maggie hesitated for a moment but then decided to follow the ghost. The woman led Maggie to a hidden room at the back of the mansion. Inside, there was a small altar, with candles and incense burning. The woman pointed to the altar, and Maggie felt a strange compulsion to light a candle. She hesitated for a moment but then reached out and lit a candle. As the candle flickered to life, Maggie felt a sense of peace wash over her. She realized that the whispers in the walls had been trying to tell her that the mansion was a sacred place, a place of healing and transformation. In the end, Maggie left the mansion, but she never forgot the ghostly woman who had led her to the hidden room. She knew that she had been guided to the mansion for a reason and that the whispers in the walls had been a message from the spirit world. Maggie couldn't shake off the feeling that there was more to the story of the mansion. She spent days researching the history of the house, reading books and articles and talking to experts on the paranormal. Her research led her to the local library, where she found an old newspaper article from the early 1900s. The article described a fire that had broken out in the mansion, killing several boarders and destroying much of the house. Maggie was shocked. She had never heard of the fire before, and she wondered why it had been kept a secret for so long. Determined to uncover the truth, Maggie returned to the mansion. She spent hours exploring every nook and cranny, searching for any clues that could shed light on the fire. Finally, she found a hidden room behind a bookshelf. Inside, there were old ledgers and documents, including a letter from the previous owner of the mansion to the new owner. The letter described the strange behavior of the boarders, and how they had been involved in illegal activities, including smuggling and prostitution. The previous owner had tried to warn the new owner, but the new owner had ignored the warnings, eager to make a quick profit. Maggie felt a chill run down her spine. The secrets of the mansion were darker than she had ever imagined, and the tragedy of the fire seemed even more senseless. As she left the mansion, Maggie felt a sense of closure. She had uncovered the truth about the mansion and had given voice to the whispers in the walls. But as she walked away, she couldn't help but feel that the mansion still held many secrets, and that the ghosts of the boarders were still haunting its halls. Years later, Maggie returned to the mansion, this time with a team of paranormal investigators. They spent weeks exploring the mansion, using the latest equipment to try to communicate with the spirits. The investigators recorded EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, and captured strange orbs of light on their cameras. But the ghosts of the boarders remained elusive, their whispers echoing through the walls but never revealing themselves. In the end, Maggie realized that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, and that the mansion would always hold a special place in her heart. She knew that the whispers in the walls would always be a reminder of the ghosts that still walk the earth, searching for the peace that had eluded them in life. Years went by, and Maggie had all but forgotten about the mansion and the secrets it held. She had moved on with her life, started a family, and pursued other interests. But one night, as she was flipping through the channels on her TV, she came across a news report about the mansion. The current owner, a wealthy businessman, had decided to renovate the mansion and turn it into a luxury hotel. Maggie's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't believe that someone would want to profit from the tragedy that had occurred in the mansion so many years ago. Determined to stop the renovations, Maggie contacted the owner of the mansion and tried to persuade him to change his mind. But the owner was adamant, and he refused to listen to Maggie's warnings. Undeterred, Maggie decided to take matters into her own hands. She started a petition, rallied support from the local community, and even contacted the media. Soon, the story of the mansion and its tragic past became national news. The public outcry was so strong that the owner was forced to abandon his plans, and the mansion was left to decay once again. Years went by, and the mansion became a forgotten relic, a place shrouded in mystery and fear. But Maggie never forgot the whispers in the walls, and the ghost of the boarders that still haunted the mansion. As she grew older, Maggie realized that her obsession with the mansion had consumed much of her life. But she also knew that she had made a difference, that she had given voice to the voices that had been silenced for so long. And as she looked back on her life, Maggie knew that she would always be remembered as the woman who had uncovered the secrets of the mansion and had given peace to the ghosts that still lingered within its walls. Despite the fact that the mansion had been left to decay, Maggie couldn't shake off the feeling that there was still more to the story. She knew that the spirits of the boarders were still trapped within the mansion, unable to move on until their stories were told. Determined to give the spirits the closure they deserved, Maggie spent the rest of her days investigating the history of the mansion. She scoured through archives, talked to historians, and even reached out to the descendants of the boarders. Through her research, Maggie uncovered more dark secrets about the mansion. She discovered that the boarders had been forced into a life of crime and prostitution by the owner, who had promised them a better life but had instead taken advantage of their vulnerability. Maggie also found out that the fire that had destroyed the mansion had been no accident. It had been started by one of the boarders, who had been driven to the brink of insanity by the abuse and neglect he had suffered at the hands of the owner. Maggie was horrified by what she had discovered. She knew that the spirits of the boarders were still trapped within the mansion, unable to rest until their stories were told. Determined to give them the closure they deserved, Maggie decided to hold a memorial service for the boarders. She reached out to the local community and invited them to attend. The service was held in the courtyard of the mansion, and it was attended by hundreds of people. As they stood together, Maggie recounted the stories of the boarders, sharing their pain and their struggles with the world. And as she spoke, something remarkable happened. The spirits of the boarders began to appear, their misty forms hovering over the crowd. Maggie knew that it was a sign that the spirits had finally found peace, that they could finally move on from the mansion and the dark secrets that had haunted them for so long. And as she looked up at the spirits, Maggie knew that her mission had been accomplished. She had given voice to the whispers in the walls, and she had given closure to the spirits of the boarders. As she walked away from the mansion, Maggie knew that she had finally found the peace that had eluded her for so long. And she knew that the spirits of the boarders were finally at rest, their stories told and their pain forgotten. As time passed, the mansion became a place of pilgrimage for people from all over the world. They came to pay their respects to the boarders, and to honor Maggie's memory. The mansion was no longer a place of darkness and fear, but a place of hope and healing. And in the years that followed, the mansion was restored to its former glory, with the help of donations from the community. It was turned into a museum, dedicated to the memory of the boarders, and their struggles for justice and freedom. Maggie's legacy lived on, not just in the mansion, but in the hearts of the people she had touched. She had been a champion for the oppressed, a voice for the voiceless, and a beacon of hope for all those who had suffered in silence. And as the sun set over the mansion, casting its warm glow on the courtyard, it was as if the spirits of the boarders were still watching over the place they had once called home. And as they drifted away into the night, their whispers echoing through the walls, they left behind a legacy of hope and love that would endure for generations to come. The end. Thanks for watching.